come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Partu. Joining me today is Steve_Baxi, the hardest working man on YouTube.
Hello everybody. That's Steve_Baxi with all lowercase letters.
Yes, exactly, and that's what it says on his birth certificate.
Yep, exactly how it was written.
Steve is truly a millennial child.
There's also 1994 on the side of it and everything.
Yeah. Anyway... Your parents were really forward-thinking, weren't they? We planned out all his usernames. We already registered him a Facebook account.
Before Facebook existed.
That's actually something I've been talking about is parents creating, Facebook accounts for their newborn babies and everything. The kids are going to have an online identity that goes back for years before they even know what they want to be when they grow up. So when they try to get a job, their employer is going to be able to look up their entire life history.
That's terrifying.
And that's crazy, right?
Yeah. Oh, God. There's a whole ethics issue video there somewhere.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, so we are not talking about... we're talking about something kind of ethically related, but not really focusing on that part of it.
No, not that kind of data ethics.
Yeah. We are talking about elaborate crimes, and this is a topic that I kind of came up with springing off of Milan making a stupid joke.
Sounds about right.
Well, Milan was supposed to be here, and he was supposed to come up with the topic, and so I gave him some time to just brainstorm last week, and he goes, why don't we talk about robbing banks? I was like, actually, you know what? Why don't we talk about elaborate crimes in movies, television shows, comic books? Because this is a thing that, happens a lot. There's, no one just walks into a bank with a gun in a movie or a comic.
No.
It's always, this really elaborate, crazy thing that, even when they have guns in the bank, it's more than that, right?
Yep.
And so, I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about the fictionalization of crime and how over the top it all gets, and in different fictional media.
Well, we should probably front load it with this, because I feel like this is going to be the go-to thought for everyone, but the Ocean's movies, right?
I was just about to bring those up, too, yeah.
Yep, the Ocean's movies. The original with the Rat Pack and Dean Martin, all that, and then the...
Anthony makes with Clooney and everybody,
yeah. The George Clooney ones. So just the whole idea of, look at how basically sexy it is to plan out a crime. Because that's all they really were.
Mm-hmm.
They were just there for the show. None of them had to make any sense. They just had to look complicated.
Yeah, totally. And as well as let me just actually share something with you real quick. So I've been playing through all the Sly Cooper games. I played through the new one. It's actually pretty good.
I still haven't done that one. I really want to.
It's all right. And there is something ingenious about making a video game based on heists, because you have natural objectives, so it works really well in the story. And so my idea was, let's make Ocean's 14 a video game, first-person perspective, and you're the 14th.
That would be cool.
Right?
I would like that a lot, yeah.
Anyway, so getting back to just elaborate crimes, yeah, it's interesting. I remember there was even a television show that, failed series, but they were trying to make a show called Heist, and each season was going to be just building up to this ridiculous, elaborate Ocean's 11 style crime.
That's interesting. I remember Heist, yeah.
Yeah, I think it only made it 3 episodes.
But, I mean, if we just want to go to... Well, I don't want to go too fast because there's a lot to cover here, but, if we just go to TV and bouncing off the Ocean stuff, but, that's what makes White Collar work. That's what made Burn Notice work. That's what made Leverage work.
Yeah, I mean... And getting away from robbing banks, you can go into, murders, and you look at, the lengths that these characters went to commit murders in shows like Monk and Psych.
Yeah, and I mean, going as far back as, 1940s with Double Indemnity, that whole movie about planning a murder.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, North by Northwest is like the most. It's damn near ingenious.
Yeah.
Like, and going back to Psych real quick, there's an episode where it's like a murder takes place on the set of a soap opera.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah, and fucking Lassiter comes in, because I wanted to call him Lassie. Lassiter comes in, and he's sure it's one of the writers, and his reasoning as a true detective is, well, who sits around and comes up with ingenious ways to murder people? Writers.
I love that show. I completely forgot about it.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Shit, there's a movie that opens up that way. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Or maybe it's a trailer or something. Is it? Shit. There's a movie or something that opens up with, there are two professions in which... Oh, it's Castle. There are two professions in which people sit around in a room all day coming up with ways to kill people. Psychopaths and crime fiction writers.
Oh, yeah, that's the first episode.
I'm in the more profitable one. Yeah, that was in, like, the very first episode of Castle, and it's just really, really, like, when you think about just how crazy we get in fictionalizing crimes to where it takes these genius-level intellects to make it seem plausible that happened, and this can go all the way back to Sherlock Holmes, I think, is the earliest example I'm able to think up of just ridiculously elaborate crimes.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of the locked room mystery and just a fiction in general dealing with those impossible situations and trying to make your brain rack around and figure out how these things work. It's become less so about that, though, right? Because the genius about Sherlock Holmes was, if you read those books carefully, you could figure it out before Holmes. It's possible. But we've kind of gotten to this point where, specifically with stuff like with Leverage, where they just make up techno jargon for how things are working in order to make the crimes work. That's partly why I like the movie The Town so much, the Ben Affleck movie, because it is one big elaborate bank robbery movie, but it's very simple and everything makes perfect sense. There's no like overcomplicated filter of look how awesome this is put on top of it.
Yeah, and I mean, we've gotten away from it, but that's just because of lazy writing.
Yeah.
Because shows like Psych, when they're written well, you could piece it together before the character did.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you couldn't, even if it was preposterous, part of the reason that show worked is because the lavishness of it was enjoyable. It was infectious. It was fun. With stuff like Ocean's 11, that charm wore off really quickly.
I disagree. I think Ocean's 11 are still really fun movies. It's just kind of like... It's just kind of the novelty of seeing all those guys on screen together and interacting. But yeah, I can see why it wouldn't work for everybody.
I guess it might also be just depending on how you watch them. Because if you watch them as they came out in theaters, that would definitely be fun. But if you watched it like I did, where it was back to back, it got really boring.
Oh yeah, I would never have an Ocean's Day.
Yeah, that's what I did. Like I never saw them, and I watched all three back to back, and then the original. I'm like, this is really boring.
What is it? Ocean's 13, where they make the fact that Julia Roberts' character looks like Julia Roberts a major plot point?
I think so.
Yeah, that is like, even American Dad made fun of that. And it's like, yeah, that is just stupid.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't even like a wink to the audience. It was a major plot point.
No, I mean, that's part of why I just didn't enjoy them at a point. But they're not bad movies. They were just kind of eh.
Yeah, I could certainly get that. It's just kind of like fun. The Ocean's movies are something I catch when they're, like, I don't watch TV anymore, but I catch when they're on TV. And I've had an urge to rewatch the Ocean movies again.
I'd be down for doing reviews of that at some point.
Yeah, we'd have to space them out, but that could be fun.
Yeah. Going back to the original with Sinatra and then just going forward.
Yeah, I could see that. See, I've never watched the originals. I've only watched the Clooney ones.
The original is really good.
Oh yeah,
It holds up really well.
I didn't even know there was an original until I was in like high school.
That's understandable. I don't think they put it out on Blu-ray still. Like, it's just not a movie that gets released.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's unfortunate because Sinatra was in some damn good films.
And the version of it I have actually has a commentary by Sinatra's son.
Oh, wow.
So
he just passed recently, too.
Yeah, he just died recently. It's really interesting to listen to him talk about his dad long after his heyday, because it was recorded in, like, the 90s or the early 2000s.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but no, it's a good movie.
They might have done that for the release of the new one or something.
Probably. I don't actually own them. I don't actually own like the latest edition. I just have that one with Frank Sinatra's son.
Gotcha. Anyway,
yeah.
Sorry, people. Yeah, it's just fun to look at how elaborate crimes get, because I mean, you have like The Dark Knight that opens with this crazy bank heist that shouldn't, by any natural logic, work. Like, everyone, praises the Nolan films for being so realistic, but I'm like, I'd like to think that crooks are somewhat smarter than that. That if someone goes, hey, once he's done doing his job, kill him. I'm like, but what about when I'm done doing my job? Oh, no, you're fine. Like, one guy pieces it together, but you think the others would.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's just a really fucking cool heist. It just gives you this great sense of how brilliant the fucking Joker is at the beginning of that awesome movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about getting you sucked in, right? Because the way that movie opens is it's got the Hans Zimmer score, which is like a heartbeat, which is like a clock ticking, and then just suddenly a window smashes, and you're right in the middle of the heist.
Yeah, totally.
It's shot and it's edited really, really well. That's part of why these elaborate heists work, is because it doesn't matter if it makes any sense by the end of the day. It's just a matter of how well it's able to suck you in and keep you there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you and I have talked about this before, but I still really like that there's possibly a reference to Batman, like, taking over the early alert system in Gotham.
Yeah.
The more I think about that, the more I think it's Batman.
Yeah, no, I like that, and I like the because that's just building off of the Batman thing with Batwave, which is so much smarter than a bat signal.
I mean, in this modern day, sure, the bat signal is one of the things where it made sense back when it was first introduced, but as technology grew more and more, it makes less and less sense.
No, that's true. I find it weird that no one uses Batwave after that show. Like, it's a genius idea.
Well, I mean, that show quits using it.
It does, because it became more like animated series.
Yeah. Not like super, but in very subtle ways, yeah.
Yeah, because we can talk about that show later. We're doing a video on that anyway.
Yeah, I finished it, by the way, so whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm on season 5.
Gotcha.
So I should be done within the week.
Okay, well, we'll set up some time then. But yeah, it's one of those things, like, the elaborate nature of supervillain crimes. I think all of this, I'd like to think that, at a certain point this all goes to comic books for upping the stakes. I don't have anything to factually back that up, but that's where I like to think this branching out of the elaborate crime, elaborate murder mystery comes out of, because comics were just published so much more regularly than everything else that they just ran out of ideas quicker, so they had to come up with more and more inventive things.
There's a really good introduction to the John Byrne Man of Steel stuff, where they talk about Lex Luthor and that whole elaborate crime thing. The whole idea that it doesn't make any sense, and I think it was Marv Wolfman who wrote this, it doesn't make any sense to him that Lex Luthor, as a genius robot scientist who would have to have money to build these robots, would need to rob banks. Like, it doesn't make any sense. The robots he's using to rob the banks cost more money than the money he gets from the bank itself. So it just doesn't make any sense. So they turn him into a multi-billionaire, but then the multi-billionaire thing turns into more elaborate crimes, except now it's just more subtle and, like, corporate-driven.
Yeah, there's that like, I was talking to Comics Kid about Sinestro being just awful in the DC animated universe, because they just had no idea what they were doing with him.
They didn't know what they were doing with Green Lantern, period, for most of that show.
John Stewart's a great Green Lantern, and they do a really good job with him in that show, but he gets like 2 episodes. But they have Sinestro when they're doing the whole Lex Luthor in charge of the Injustice League thing, and he's apparently planning a gold heist, and Sinestro's just there. He's like, it'll be the biggest gold heist in history. And I'm like, what the fuck are you even doing there, Sinestro?
Why the fuck does he care about gold? I don't get it.
Is he gonna make it into a cage for Green Lantern? I have no idea why Sinestro is there. Like, the only explanation we ever get for Sinestro being involved in the Injustice League is Sinestro just really hates Green Lanterns. I'm like, well, I guess, but why is he teaming up with you guys? Sinestro would be just as likely to fucking kill all of you.
I always liked the Green Lantern Sinestro element of Justice League until I started reading Jeff Johns' Green Lantern.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, wow, this is so much more interesting.
Mm-hmm. And, sorry, guys, we keep getting really off here.
This is something I feel like we should have outlined, because there's lots to talk about.
Yeah, it's cool, but anyways, I was talking about comics.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that the elaborate nature of crimes and other media comes in part, at least, from comics, because they came out so regularly. You know, for a while there, you could get a Batman comic book every week kind of situation, right?
Yeah, and I mean, how stereotypical is it of the superhero stops the bank robbery, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's... Like, at a certain point, I wonder why people even rob banks in Metropolis.
Yeah, or Gotham.
Yeah, I mean, Gotham, you know, I can believe maybe a little bit more because some people do it in the daytime to try to avoid Batman.
Yeah.
But, no, it's just like, why would you even bother anymore? And, like, when you're running away, why would you be shooting at Superman?
Is it the powers, do you think? Is it part of the issue is... bank robberies were cool, but now that you have people like Superman, you have to make the bank robberies more complicated in order to circumvent Superman's powers.
Yeah, I think so. I really think it is that. Like, there's this old quote out there, and I wish I could remember who said it, but the greater the villain, the greater the hero it takes to overcome them.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's this kind of, almost evolutionary arms race of natural selection, like, working its way into comic books of, well, okay, we have this hero that's all great and cool and stuff, but it's gonna get boring and stale if they just keep stopping the same people and the same kind of things over and over again. Well, we can't invent new crimes, so, like, we can't just invent a new type of crime to really introduce yet, because that's a weird concept. So let's instead just take a pre-existing crime, change it up a little bit, and have the hero stop something like that. So you'll get, like, you know, mind robberies or whatever. Or let's just make this bank robbery really, really elaborate. Or let's make this murder case that Batman has to solve really, really complicated so that only the world's greatest detective could figure it out. And that's why, you know, Long Halloween all comes down to a nail.
Yeah.
And it's like that brilliant reveal that, you know, Jeff Loeb gets a ton of shit, but man, that's a great fucking scene.
No, I love Long Halloween, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's also just, there's so much creativity in trying to understand how the robberies take place in the first place, because I don't know about you, but I always loved those scenes at the end of, like, 70s Batman stories where he would stop and explain step by step how this happened.
No, I'm not a big 70s Batman fan, so...
Okay, well, I've always liked that idea. I've always liked Batman going through, solving all these mysteries. He kept saying things that I didn't understand the context of as he was saying them, but then at the end, he would explain how this entire situation came to be. And it'd be the most contrived thing ever, but it'd be amazing, because he figured it all out, and I don't even know where he picked up the clues.
Well, like, but, you know, Steve, that's almost just you praising bad writing, potentially.
No, it is, but I mean, part of it is the thrill, right? Like, part of it is just, like you said, it takes the world's greatest detective to solve this.
Certainly, and that's why I prefer when... Like, I prefer when there is a genius crime, but there's a just as genius an explanation, right?
I think that's why the Riddler works as well as he does.
Yeah, when he's written well, he's, like, when you know how to write the Riddler, you can get some really, really great stories out of it.
Yeah.
By the way, I got Dark Knight, Dark City. I'll be talking about it on my comic reviews this week.
Nice, I love that story.
Yeah, I took the fucking, you know, we were talking before we started recording about Scott Snyder, like, pulling from other people, and so the second, like, volume of 0 Year or whatever is called Dark City, and I told the person at my comic book store, yeah, Dark Knight, Dark City is the name of the book, and she goes, Batman Dark City, Zero Year? I'm like, no. No.
I forgot Zero Year had that title, Dark City.
Yeah, and it's Riddler-centric.
It is, I forgot.
Really weird, right? Anyway,
I wonder if that was on purpose. Because Morrison took a lot of his Batman stuff from Dark Knight, Dark City.
Interesting. No, but like, yeah, that's why Riddler works as well as he does. That's why some of the '60s Batman stuff's just really fun to watch because it's just these batshit crazy things. But I remember.
I guess maybe just to put a pin in this, Batman's got the advantage on this elaborate crime thing in this conversation, right? Because so many of his character villains are either mentally disturbed or people with extreme means, and so it's just more natural to build a story of preposterous crime situations with his character set.
Yeah, and it doesn't work as well for Superman, because what you want to see with Superman is him use his powers in really cool and inventive ways. So you have all these, like, really interesting, wacky characters with these crazy power sets that Superman has to find a way to beat.
Yeah.
So that's why you have, like, how does Superman beat a robot that's just as strong as him, but that's powered by kryptonite? So he can't get close to him, so he can't battle him, and when he does, he gets his ass handed to him.
Yeah.
And so that's why Metallo's really interesting. How does Superman deal with a monster that he can't touch? And that's why Parasite's interesting.
Yeah, it's more of like a puzzle for how Superman uses his powers before it's about the nature of the crimes themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, often, like, the villains in Metropolis don't even care about the crimes they're committing. They're just doing it to draw Superman out.
Yeah.
And I don't get why. Like, at a certain point, if you escape from these supervillain prisons, why don't these guys just go chill somewhere? That's another issue, though. Who are some other characters in comics, then, that deal with, like, just crazy... Does the Question deal with much stuff? I haven't read much Question.
Well, the Dennis O'Neil Question stuff is all about, like, political corruption and stuff, so it deals with that kind of, but it's not, like, elaborate mystery crime things. It's more of, like, straight-up noir detective work.
Gotcha.
I was gonna say Iron Man deals with this a lot, because Iron Man's bad guys tend to be evil businessmen, and there's always, like, elaborate conspiracies and stuff to make that work. The brilliant thing about Justin Hammer in the comics is that he's the guy that finances and builds all of the weapons for all of the villains Iron Man fights. And so it's always a mystery for him to, like, figure out why these villains are robbing this place when they get no advantage from it, which leads back to Hammer, which leads into why the villains use him in the first place. And then Obadiah Stane's exactly the same way, where he's a master manipulator, gamesman, and everything has to revolve around him setting up game boards. So Iron Man's got that in spades, but Iron Man's also very much like Batman.
Yeah. So maybe it's more of the human characters that get this, I guess.
Daredevil doesn't have it.
Really? Daredevil doesn't have elaborate crimes. It's just blind guy fighting in alleys, huh?
Well, if you wouldn't put it that way. I mean, no, he doesn't really. I mean, Daredevil, from everything I've read, Daredevil is two things. It's really badass ninja fights, and it's really soul-crushing one-man-against-a-corrupt-city stories. It's never like, this bank robbery is way too preposterous for me to solve in one issue.
See, I remember the Affleck movie had, like, a subplot about him trying to solve a murder.
Yeah, the comics always do that, like, law-wise. Like, the Bendis run has this whole thing with, what was that character's name? White Tiger, who's on trial. And there's, like, a mystery around that, but that's more like legal drama before it's elaborate crime drama.
Gotcha. Boston Legal had some crazy crimes that the guys had to defend. That was pretty fun.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I remember us talking about that show. I need to start watching it.
Yeah, I like it quite a bit. I haven't watched it since it got canceled, or since it ended, though. I have a feeling, like, nowadays it'd get accused of being, like, not all men or whatever, but I'm like, what the fuck? You can't accuse something of being pro-political movement before a political movement existed. I find that, like, that's such a weird concept to me.
I'm gonna have to watch it now, just out of curiosity.
Well, there's a lot of talk about, and we're getting off again, but whatever. There's a lot of talk in that series about abortion and like they don't ever, Alan Shore's character in the past was in a relationship, and the woman he was with got pregnant, and she decided to have an abortion, and he didn't want her to, and so that ended their relationship. And he didn't say that like women shouldn't have it anymore, or men should be able to have a choice in this. He's just like, it's just really hard that I had no say in what happened to that.
Right.
And it's like this really big thing that he's always dealing with whenever like issues of responsibility or fatherhood come up. And so, of course, no one would look at the complexity of an interesting character point, and they would just go straight to the hashtag.
Right. No, I can see where you're coming from, yeah.
Yeah, so, anyway, but, no, Boston Legal dealt with a lot of stuff like that. Like, there was, her name it wasn't Betty White, but there was a woman that looked a lot like Betty White.
Right.
And she was like the receptionist at the Crane, Poole and Schmidt law firm for years. And at one point, she's like, I can't remember if she gets fired or she gets forced to retire. But either way, she's not working there anymore. And so she commits crime. She commits a crime. Like, I don't even remember what it was. But she commits a crime all in order to get them to represent her so that she can be part of the legal drama and all the fun and craziness that went on in the firm again, because she missed it.
That's just hilarious.
Yeah, there's like it was so disappointing that David Kelly's Wonder Woman show was not good.
That was pretty awful. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was just okay. Like, it was, at least he tried, was kind of my thing.
The criticism lobbed against Fuller House is exactly what I would call that show, which is, it's a porn parody without the porn.
Oh, wow. Anyway, so, like, the one thing that Kelly does really well is he seems to always get, like, these celebrity cameos. I feel like he just has friends. Like, so he had Dr. Phil and Nancy Grace come on for the Wonder Woman pilot, and that was kind of fun to see. But he had Nancy Grace, like, every other episode, she would do, like, a bit of her show about whatever court case was going on in Boston Legal. And at one point, this fucking creepy dude kidnaps Nancy Grace.
Right.
In order to get on the news and get all the attention, because he's really just an attention seeker.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so, like, Nancy Grace actually came on for an episode of that show to be kidnapped. It was pretty funny. Anyway, but yeah, it translates to legal dramas. I haven't watched many cop shows in a while, but I imagine they're dealing with some of that stuff there too. Just the typical cop drama, kind of getting more into into more elaborate crimes, because
yeah,
Law and Order's been on for how many years? You can't just do murder rapist over and over again.
Yeah,
you eventually have to do
most crime dramas have like transitioned to this thing where like every episode is standalone, except for like 2 or 3 episodes near the end or beginning of every season that tie into one big series-long mystery.
Yeah, I watched through, not anymore because they uploaded a new season, but I got all the way through 8 seasons of Criminal Minds except for the last 3 episodes, and I just couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
It got to be too much. But every single time the serial killers would get more and more complicated and shit, and they would keep involving the members of the team. Like, the killers would be obsessed with different members of the team or the whole team.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how well publicized is this FBI agency that I've never heard of?
Yeah, so many of the shows do that. Like, that's why I stopped watching Castle. That's why I stopped watching Bones. Trying to think of another cop show off the top of my head. I can't.
Like, Psych only had one character that was, like, interested directly in Sean.
Yeah.
That was believable. Monk had, like, the series thing of he was looking for his wife's killer, the one mystery he couldn't solve. And you had Dale the Whale. He was the only criminal that had anything to do with that.
Yeah.
And that show, of course, had one of the worst finales in history.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, I'd probably go How I Met Your Mother, Star Trek Voyager, and then Monk.
How I Met Your Mother is probably the worst last episode of anything ever.
Yeah,
Because that kind of ruins the entire show. Dexter is up there.
Really? I don't know. I thought it was just kind of lame. I didn't think it ruined the show. I thought it was just like anticlimactic.
It doesn't ruin the show the way How I Met Your Mother does, but that last episode is probably one of the worst last hours of television ever.
Fair enough. Dexter got crazy too, though.
That's true. I mean,
after the season 3, that show just got to be ridiculous. Like, he survived things literally because the script needed him to.
Yeah, totally. If anyone is listening to this conversation and they're like, I should watch Dexter, stop after season 3.
Yeah, season 3 is the end of that show.
Yeah, just pretend like there was nothing after that.
Because it's really not worth your time after that. In any way. Like, it just gets slightly less interesting. It's a very, very slow drop.
Yeah.
And just kind of slowly loses its steam as it goes along.
But it's also a very noticeable drop.
Yeah, it's like never... It's not bad after season 3.
Season 4 is
okay. Just never... Yeah, it's just never as good again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe this is a good segue to keep us in the topic, but True Detective has this. True Detective, the first season of that is the best first season of anything I've ever seen. And then season 2 happens. And that's an elaborate crime thing. I mean, that whole format of, like, every season's a different story lends itself to this conversation, because it's always, like, some big elaborate crime. That's what American Crime Story is, that's what American Horror Story is, that's what True Detective is. Trying to think of another one, but I think
I haven't watched True Detective, but I know it's just like they're just investigating a murder or something, right? In the first season.
Yeah, there's the first episode is like there's a girl who's killed at a tree and posed in a certain way, and the whole show is just like who was the killer. Okay, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I heard good things about it. It's just I don't have access to it, so I haven't watched it.
No, that's fair, and the DVDs are ridiculously overpriced.
Probably. I mean, you got to make your money somehow.
It's only 13 episodes. Not even. It's 8 episodes. It's 8 episodes, and it costs $50 fucking bucks.
What?
Right?
Fuck that noise.
8 episodes for $50. That's not fucking worth it.
Yeah. And so, all right. So we got like these really elaborate, really violent. Like that was my problem with Criminal Minds that just turned me off to it. Is like. I probably would have liked that show more when I was in, middle school or high school. But I just don't have the same patience for, like, gore that's meant to be taken seriously as I used to.
Yeah.
It doesn't disturb me. It's just, I just get tired of it. Because, I'm supposed to think of these as people. Mandy Patinkin, whoever, I can never remember that guy's last name. He was in the first 2 seasons of Criminal Minds, and he was, like, really, really fascinating character, most interesting character in the show, and then he just leaves at the end of the second season. He just quits.
That's weird.
Well, the actor couldn't do it anymore. He's a method actor, and he just could not be in that headspace. Like, I saw him give an interview about this. He's like, I'm glad I left since that show is still going on, and we're 10 years later. He just couldn't do it anymore. And he goes, and I should have known from the beginning. I mean, the very first episode has a woman locked up in a cage. I should have known what I was getting into, but I just didn't think it would be a problem then. And after 2 seasons, I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't be in that headspace. It wasn't psychologically functioning for me.
Right. And I mean, I've seen lots of method actors talk about things like that. The whole idea of playing either a serial killer or someone that's too smart for their own good that tends to hurt them in their own daily social lives. And so you get these really dramatic, great, elaborate crime stories out of it, but at what cost to the person?
Certainly. And I wonder what Jared Leto's mental health is right now.
That dude was never sane. I listened to nothing but 30 Seconds to Mars music all day today. The Joker did not make him crazy. He made the Joker crazy. That's all I'm saying. Watch any of their music videos. I don't know what the fuck is going on with that dude.
The next DC movie reboot, they'll just go to an asylum and just hire a inmate to be the Joker.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about Jared Leto going nuts. He was already nuts.
Right. Anyway, it's just one of those weird things where you look at how violent and how crazy it all gets, and at a certain point I'm like, do you just keep going with this, or is it time to just call it quits? Like, if you're just going to keep ramping up the ludicrousness of it and still try to ground it in any kind of reality, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, the crazier these things go, you have to either go one of two directions. You have to go the comical route, where the ludicrousness is part of the joke, and no one takes it seriously and everyone's okay with it. Kind of like...
Yeah, Batman 66.
Yeah. Or you can go like the Blacklist kind of way of like it's ultra serious and it's ultra depressing. And if that's the case, then these elaborate crime stories are going to be far more taxing than I think they should be. Part of my problem with Hitchcock movies is that he always has these really fascinating identity themes, but it's always wrapped up in really convoluted plots. And the convoluted plots are interesting if you were watching them as just entertainment. But when you try to analyze things in relation to those convoluted plots, there's a problem.
I wonder if that holds up with Rope, because I think Rope's really, really basic. It's not like that. It's not that complicated, and it all comes from the character plays. I think that's still my favorite Hitchcock movie.
That's also the one he hates the most.
Really?
Yeah, because he thought the entire movie was too much of a gimmick, and he didn't like himself for it.
This is why I can't listen to creators talk about their own work. I think they're always wrong.
No, that's understandable. I've been listening to a lot of Hitchcock interviews. That guy has very strange taste. He's always about art over story.
Interesting. I've got to watch that Anthony Hopkins movie that just totally flew under the radar.
Which one?
At some point. I've got to see that film.
Which one?
You didn't know about this?
I don't think so.
I don't blame you for not knowing. They made an Anthony Hopkins movie that's a biopic of Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. I've never seen it though.
Yeah, exactly. No one watched it. It just disappeared. It was supposed to be like, Oscar bait, and just didn't catch anything.
Yeah, that was in the same time period where we got like Imitation Game and J. Edgar and all those other biopics.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that one.
I forgot that existed. Yeah.
Me too. Until right now.
Oh, holy shit! Okay, I'll have to track that down. We might have to review that at some point.
Maybe. Yeah. See, and that's the thing is that I think Rope is a perfect movie. All right. So now I'm not going to say spoilers because it happens at the very beginning of the movie. So if you watch the movie, this won't spoil anything for you. It's the opening scene. Anyway, in Rope, they open with two guys killing their friend and stuffing his body in like this, what would you call it? A trunk? Like a trunk, like a table that opens up. There you go. They stuff his body in this table that opens up, and then they close it. And then, like 5 minutes later, after they have this conversation about the fact that they just killed a dude, they're like, "See, we did it. Now we're these ultra men. We're these great intellects, and we're better than everybody else because we did this. And now all our friends are coming over for a party, and we're going to have a party right on top of his corpse." And then they, like, put a tablecloth on it and dress it all up, and then the whole party is just this, like, suspense thing of, oh my god, is someone going to find this fucking body?
Yeah.
And that's a really elaborate setup, but it's also really, really, it all comes from the characters. So I think it's my favorite Hitchcock movie, yeah.
That whole movie is about the perfect murder, and it's interesting. I like that movie a lot, too. Particularly just from, like, production standpoint of, like, he tried to do the whole thing in long takes, but at that point cameras could only do up to, like, 10 or 20 minutes. And so they, like, kept panning behind objects or actors to, like, create the illusion of this is still going.
Yeah, he would have loved digital. I wonder, you could remake that movie with digital now. That'd be interesting.
I mean,
just do it as a play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to see it remade necessarily. I like Jimmy Stewart in that movie a lot, and I just can't imagine anyone else doing it, but it's possible.
I don't know. That's one that, like, if you keep the story the same, I think you could update that and make it, just as thrilling and literally do it all as a one-take film.
Maybe so.
that'd be a really unique way to do a film, and like I think the gimmick alone would bring people to it.
No, maybe so. Yeah, but no, notoriously Hitchcock doesn't like that movie very much, and it's not for the perfect crime element at all. It's just the technique of it. He just thought the whole idea of doing the long take hurt his style, because so much of what he's about is cutting and assembly and creating emotions out of the way scenes are cut together. And so having no cuts, he thought, destroyed the artistry of that movie.
No, I wouldn't agree with him on that.
I don't agree with him
because,
either, but that's what he says.
Yeah, so much of that worked because of there's that scene as now spoilers for Rope. There's
that movie came out in 1948. I feel like we should be allowed to talk about it without saying spoilers.
Well, not enough people have seen it, though.
But it came out in 1948. At what point is it not spoiler warning time?
I guess that's a good point.
It's been like 70 fucking years, man.
Han Solo is dead.
Yes, Han Solo is dead, alright? He's dead at the end. Dumbledore dies because Snape kills him. Snape was protecting Harry the whole time. Soylent Green is people. The Planet of the Apes is just Earth on the future.
Bruce Willis isn't alive.
He's dead the whole time.
Water kills the aliens. It's plants. What else have we got here? Norman Bates is really the killer.
George Kaplan does not exist. He's made up by the government.
I don't even know what that one was.
That's the end of North by Northwest.
Okay. Man, this is...
Okay, but you were saying...
Spoilers for Rope, but anyway, they reveal the guy that they killed finally as the tension is really at its highest, and outside of the window, the neon sign on the next door building turns on and starts blinking green and red, and it's just so fucking intense right there.
Yeah.
I think the artistry works brilliantly in that, and I would love to see Rope as a stage play. Oh my god, it's perfect for it.
No, I agree with you. I like that movie a lot. It's in my top 5 of Hitchcock.
Oh wow, okay. And I don't feel bad for talking about doing a little mini review of Rope there, because that's a very elaborate crime to I guess it's not elaborate in the same sense of, Riddler tying weather balloons to elephants to make them fly in a Green Arrow comic, but it's elaborate, and that's something that happens. It's elaborate in that, they kill a guy, and then they just have this setup for this really, really complex, really high suspense story of, will people find this body?
Yeah.
And
I mean, Hitchcock's, I think, is a good anchor for a lot of this conversation, because so much of what he says he deals in nightmares, and the whole idea of his filmmaking is, whether it's a horror movie, whether it's a thriller, whether it's a mystery, it's all about the insanity of the plot creating a situation where the film feels like the characters are going through some sort of nightmare. And yeah. I think the whole idea of elaborate crimes works with that intent.
Certainly. And, it's funny that we talked about it, because Bill and I did... when back in Horror Month, we did the first issue of Tales from the Crypt, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to note that elaborate crimes, when they're done poorly, it's really, really ridiculous. So there's 5 or 6 stories in that first issue, and one of them's all text, and it's about this guy who hates his wife's dog so much that he just wants it to die.
Right.
And so, how do you kill a dog, Steve? You back over it, make it look like an accident, right?
Yeah, I guess.
This guy locks the dog in a concrete room, or tries to lock the dog in a concrete room with a bathtub that's going to slowly fill the room with water so that the dog drowns and won't be able to get out, because it knows how to open doors and shit like some dogs do.
Right.
He tries to lure the dog in there, but ends up getting trapped in there himself, and the water automatically kicks on, and he's not able to get out. So he sits there in the room trying everything he can think of to get out until he's down to just like an inch left between his lips and the ceiling, trying to hold on for dear life to his last breath. And he ends up drowning. I'm like, why the fuck would you go to those lengths to kill a dog? What? Why wouldn't you just, like, hit it with a shovel or something? I can think of a million ways to kill a dog that are both easier, less dangerous, and more believable for, oh, honey, I'm sorry, your dog died.
At some point, this whole thing just comes down to, like, Rube Goldberg machines, right?
Right.
Like, it's just, how complicated can you make it just so you say you can do it?
And it's one of those things where, like, I feel like I've read a story like that in comics where multiple villains come up, like, make a bet for the most elaborate way to pull off a crime.
That's basically Almost Got Him.
What?
The animated series episode Almost Got Him.
Oh, yeah. Totally. And it's funny, like, Grant Morrison... I wish Milan was here because he could explain this better than I can. Grant Morrison, in one of his books, talked about, like one of the books, talked about how crime in Gotham has transcended crime and become performance art.
Oh, yeah, that was in Super Gods, I think.
Yeah, and I totally agree with him at that point, because the Joker, just, like, in my headcanon for the DC Universe, Batman becomes Batman to take on the Mafia, and, like, you know, this is obviously heavily inspired by Nolan. He becomes Batman to take on the Mafia, and he succeeds resoundingly, but that does not defeat crime.
Right.
It just weakens the Mafia so that these super criminals like the Joker, and I love that line in Dark Knight, and they never pick up on it in Rises. So the super criminal like the Joker can come in and start up a new wave of crime that's even worse than the Mafia stuff, where crime turns into performance art. Because Joker has that amazing line in Dark Knight where he goes, "See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve." Oh my god, why didn't they use that?
I don't know, I love that line a lot. I love everything Heath Ledger's Joker says, but...
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because part of the reason a lot of Batman villains, but even just comic book villains in general, mess with their heroes is just to say that they could do it, right? Like, how much of Lex Luthor's motivation in getting to Superman is simply, I want to be a peg above you, even if you survive at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the performance art analogy a lot because the whole idea of performance art, the whole idea of, like, conceptual art simply being that you highlight the things that are implicit in society through the art by making them explicit themselves. So, like, you highlight the weakness of a hero through the way you commit a crime, and whether or not you succeed doesn't matter, as long as it gets to the hero.
Certainly, and that's why, like, everyone has their gimmick, and it's one of the few things that I think actually works about their Mr. Freeze in the Batman, where, like, it's really stupid to me, but he keeps stealing diamonds, like diamond-related gem things, and, like, that's a carryover from the old Mr. Freeze of the 60s and everything, where he would steal diamonds and jewels. And it's like, yeah, of course, because you gotta keep with the ice theme of your superpower. So you've gotta steal diamonds, and Catwoman has to steal only cat-related things.
Yeah, Penguin's gotta steal birds.
Exactly. So it's just that it becomes this, like, running thing where you have to keep with your gimmick, and like, so when Riddler shows up in that show, the Joker's like, "Are you moving in on my gag?" And he's like, "No, riddles, not jokes."
See, that's partly why I love the Laughing Bat so much.
Oh, that is, yeah.
I love that episode to death. It's just as good as Laughing Fish, maybe better.
Oh, it's better.
I think this is a good place to talk about perspective, because we're talking about these elaborate crimes in relation to how they affect characters and story and such, but there's two ways to do this. You can do it from the perspective of the people committing the crime, or you can do it from the perspective of the people solving the crime. And whichever way you do it, you're automatically you're automatically have different emphases. You're automatically trying different kinds of stories. Part of why I think The Town is such a brilliant film is because it does it from both. You follow Ben Affleck and his gang committing a crime, while at the same time following a woman that was at the last crime and was traumatized and is trying to help the government take down the operation. And so it's a balancing act of, look at how cool it is to build to this crime, look at how difficult it is in trying to solve it, and look at what happens to all of the people that are interconnected in between. It's a really good movie if people haven't seen it. I think it's still the best Ben Affleck directed film.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Town, but it did look really interesting to me.
Also, it's the movie with the awesome movie poster of nuns with machine guns.
Well, did I ever tell you about the nuns with guns story?
I don't think so.
A friend of mine in high school got suspended for 2 weeks because he was in computer science class, and he was finished with his project and everything, so he was just bored and playing around on Google, and he Googled nuns with guns, and he was mainly just finding pictures of nuns holding rifles and stuff, and then then as the teachers walk around the room and he's scrolling through these images, the one picture that comes up as the teacher walks by is a nun with her tits out.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so he got suspended for 2 weeks.
Never Google nuns at school. You don't know what will show up.
I suppose that is the lesson here.
It's also a Ghost Rider story where Ghost Rider is hunting down the devil while being chased by an army of ninja assassin nuns.
I don't know how to react to that, Steve.
It's Jason Aaron, and it's hilarious. And I know there's a fourth faction chasing after him while he's chasing after the devil while they're being chased by nuns. It's a really fucking weird story.
That's very strange. Anyway. Yeah, I do like things that take it from the criminal perspective, because it's just rarer to do that, because how long can you possibly go on with something like that?
And
from the
you mentioned this
side?
earlier, that's what Sly Cooper made a career out of.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where, you have to make it so that you sympathize with them, because, it might be an interesting experiment, but you cannot possibly make an entire series based around a person who is legitimately bad, right? The Joker, and, I keep bringing this back to comic books, but I find it interesting. The Joker had, I believe, a 9-issue series.
He did. He had it ongoing for a while.
Yeah, in the 70s. He had his own 9-issue series. And it didn't work because they tried their best to just make the Joker, not an asshole. Not a horrible person. He was doing his things, he was doing Joker stuff, but for the right reasons now, and it just doesn't work that way. And they did the same thing with Venom in the 90s, where it was Venom, lethal protector. I'm no.
Oh, God, yeah.
No, you're a villain. You can't do this.
Although, to be fair, they rebranded later when you got, Flash Thompson Venom as the good guy, and that was amazing.
Yeah, but that's a different thing at that point. They changed the character at that point. And so you can't consistently do something. You have to come up with a reason for why your thief characters, why your criminals are really on the just side of things.
Or you have to be unapologetic about it, right? Part of why Suicide Squad works as well as it does is because none of the characters on that team pretend like they're good guys. That's why the Deadshot miniseries is as good as it is because there's no moment in that series where Deadshot's trying to be the hero. Mm-hmm. There's a great scene where, Deadshot's going into a warehouse and he's supposed to set up a sting, and the guy's like, I don't believe that you're really on my team, so kill this guy for me. So Deadshot shoots him and kills him before the guy even finishes speaking. And then the guy's like, no, I didn't want you to actually kill him. And then Deadshot's like, well, you should have said so.
That actually reminds me of being in high school, and did your high school have a police officer assigned to it that we were talking to ours was Officer Rick, and he was telling us about his career before he got this assignment, and he was like, I was actually an undercover officer for years and years. I was trying to infiltrate drug rings and stuff. And so, of course, the question everyone asked him was, well, so did you do heroin? And he's like, I had to. And so it just made it really awkward when he came in and told us not to do drugs.
That would be awkward, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, well, you did heroin. Yeah, but I had to. Well, maybe I'll feel like I have to.
And that's an entirely different conversation, but it is interesting.
Yeah, anyway. So it's hard to sympathize with a criminal because, there's always... It's always more complicated than, criminals are just bad people, but there is a certain simplicity that's hard to get over that beyond, if you're stealing from someone, doesn't matter what your reasoning is, it's still mainly a bad thing. Even if you're stealing from a bad person, it seems like there are other ways that they should get some consequences for their actions than you stealing, because at that point, it's not really about them all the time. It's more about you also getting something out of it, as opposed to just teaching them a lesson.
And we say that, and you're completely right. But I think what's partly interesting about this is that, at least for most people, including me, a story is only as good as its villain.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily have to have the hero there if I can just sit there talking about the villain. But at the same time, the villain only works in connection to the hero he reflects. Like, I love Age of Ultron. I don't want Ultron to have his own movie. He only works in relation to how he feels about the Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
So, to do things from the villain's perspective, you have to be able to not taint them, but what makes them villainous in the first place has to rely on some sort of conception of heroism, right? Like, you can't just be evil independent of something good.
Yeah, it's this weird thing, so that when they try to do things that are associated with the villains or something, they either have to set them up against someone even worse, which, at that point, why isn't, if Joker's going up against someone worse than the Joker, which I don't think should exist, then why isn't Batman dealing with this?
Yeah. If you had an ongoing for Ra's al Ghul, that would make a lot more sense than Joker.
Yeah, you almost need to pick, a more sympathetic character, a more, middle ground character, which is why I'm not opposed to Red Hood having his own book. It's not, what they've done with him isn't good, but I'm not opposed to the idea of Jason Todd getting his own book.
Red Hood and the Outlaws could work in theory. It sucks ass, but it could work in theory.
How does one suck an ass, Steve Baxter?
Ask Scott Lodell. He's a professional at it.
Oh, wow. Ouch. No, but, it's one of those things where, I'm not opposed to that idea, but I'm just wondering if there's anything that works as, a long-term, ongoing series where you're following a criminal, and, Deadshot and Suicide Squad, but even then, their motivations
worse, yeah.
Yeah, the motivations have shifted for some reason. The Suicide Squad aren't doing it because they're proactive characters. They're doing it because they have no other choice.
Yeah.
And
I mean, so much of that book is about, warped psychology and such anyway, so it's difficult to make that work. Most of the villains they fight in that series are more of just, ideas of greater evils that they could become.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always more of a political thing anyway.
Yeah, and Sly Cooper, they have to, put that awkward line in the first game where it's we steal from master thieves, or we steal from other thieves, and that proves that we're master thieves. I'm like, yeah, okay, but you opened the game stealing from Carmelita Fox.
Yeah.
Literally, that is the open of the game.
Well, I feel like they forgot that pretty quick, because afterwards it just sort of became about the thrill.
People that they're stealing from are always bad in some way.
Oh, that's true, but, they stopped moralizing it pretty quickly.
Yeah, certainly.
That first game is not representative of how that series will ultimately turn.
Yeah, I don't know. There's always a really interesting story about family in those games.
That's true. No, I love those games. They're great.
Yeah, but so you have to either make a worse threat or something. The Ocean's movies do this, where these are all kind of jerk guys with hearts of gold.
Yeah.
But they're going up against this real asshole.
Yeah.
and so it's harder to do it from the criminal perspective because your options are so limited at that point. Whereas from the law perspective or whatever, the elaborate crimes, you can have the fun of the elaborate crimes, and you can have your character be well smart and justified and triumphant in solving them, or demoralized because he couldn't save someone from this elaborate death trap or what have you.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how these things escalate, because the moment you start a character's origin with his parents were gunned down in front of him by a robber and for no other reason, and then you progressively get into dealing with characters like the Riddler, there's just no ceiling on this. And it's always interesting. I feel like you can always make an elaborate crime fascinating, whether you go from the villainous perspective or the heroic perspective or some balance in between. But they just keep getting more and more complicated.
Yeah, and it's problematic because at a certain point I wish movies would just be like, no, just do something really basic. It doesn't need to be super complicated if your story doesn't require it.
There's a great review I was watching of a movie, and their first opening criticism, because I forget what movie it is, it was a superhero thing, but their first opening criticism is that how come every time a superhero movie happens, it has to be like 9/11s happening at the same time? Why can't it just be this dude wants to steal something?
Right.
Which arguably that's what Ant-Man was, but I didn't like it.
Yeah. I don't know. Ant-Man was... It was more than that, because then Hydra got involved out of nowhere.
Yeah, I've only seen that movie one time.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, like it kept getting ramped up, and sometimes you want it to be simplistic, but then at the same time, if it's simpler, then what's... Because we deal with sometimes with these heroes like as if they're events. Like you wouldn't want the Avengers to just show up stopping a bank robbery.
Certainly.
And at the same time, you kind of do.
I don't know, I think you just need to, like, move them away from fighting crime and just move them into being a force of protection.
Right.
Like, I like Batman stopping rapists and muggers more than I like Batman, solving murders all the time.
Right.
But the problem is, it's not as practical, because it's a big city, and no matter how fast he gets around Gotham, it's kind of implausible to believe that Batman just stumbles across a mugging every night.
Yeah.
Like 5 times a night, he just stumbles across people in the middle of mugging someone. I'm like, God, Gotham must have a huge crime per capita rate. That's crazy when you think about it. If it's just a couple blocks apart for muggings, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Who goes out on the streets at night in Gotham? Who with that kind of mugging rate? So you need him to solve things after the fact.
There's Jim Starlin's actually got a really good run on Batman that deals with that. The whole idea of there's just so much crime here that there's no possible way Batman would run into all of it and manage to solve all of it. Mm-hmm. There's an issue where like he's trying to track a murderer and he has a suspect, but his bias is to solve the crime instead of figuring out who actually did it. So Batman's wrong, and by the end of the story and by the end of the run, he never finds out who it is.
Oh wow,
it's really good.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things. One of my favorite Batman stories. It was a backup to, I believe, Detective Comics 800. It's called. Oh, wait, 800 or how high did Detective get before New 52?
I think it was 800. Because they're closing into 1,000 now.
Okay.
So I would imagine it'd have to be 800. Because I'm sure there is no Detective.
It'd be 900 then if they're closing into 1,000. So yeah, 800 sounds about right. So anyway, it's a story called In the Dark, and it's mostly third-person narration, and it's just describing all these things that are happening about this child being kidnapped and all these steps Batman is taking to try to find this kid.
Right.
And like this kid is like on the verge of dehydration. Like the person that kidnapped him obviously has no idea what they're doing. Like most kidnappings. And here's one of the good things that Criminal Minds got right. Most of the time when a child under 10 gets kidnapped, the person doing it is completely in the rush of the moment. They have no concept. There's no elaborate plan to keep and hold the kid for forever and ever. Most of the time when a child is kidnapped, it is entirely heat of the moment. Just the person got way too involved or way too caught up in what was going on in their head and did not think of the consequences at all. So when a child's kidnapped, they're dead within 24 hours, like over, I think, 90% of the time.
Right.
And so it's this kid starving to death in a basement, dehydrated in someone, locked up in someone's basement, and it's Batman trying like hell to find him all night long. And like the book ends with the kid collapsing on the floor just as Batman walks in, and so he's able to get him out, and you know we're given the impression that Batman's able to save him. And then the last panel is in the dark. A woman screams out in a park, and you see a woman getting dragged in the bushes, which is to say that there is a lot of crime in Gotham, and all the time that Batman spends dealing with one thing is time he's not dealing with another issue.
That sounds like was that the issue that came out like after War Games ended, right before they started War Crimes?
Well, there's a long distance between War Games and War Crimes, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a backup at the end of War Crimes or War Games.
Yeah, because it feels like it's something in between that era.
Yeah, and it is. It's just like Batman's just dealing with putting all his effort into one case that everyone agrees that he should put his effort into, a missing child. And he rescues the kid at the end of the day, but it's always a hollow victory for Batman because there's always he can't be everywhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's what the Bat family is for, right? Like, you can't solve all 100 crimes, but you can solve 50 of them.
Yeah.
And then if you have the family, you can solve maybe 70 of them. But that's just how it works.
Yeah, and so it's just really, really fascinating story that I feel did a great job of showing what the mission, why, you know, people always go, oh, Batman, he's always talking about the mission and stuff, and like, well, the mission is never over.
Yeah.
And that's really always fascinating to me.
Yeah, Batman's whole kind of general motivation behind everything he does.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of stuff where you like, and that was coming off of this huge elaborate event that was all set up in motion for this you know gang war and stuff. It was one of the most elaborate Batman stories I think we've ever gotten, and yet like right after it's this very subtle, very realistic thing with the superhero, very street level basic kind of thing.
It's kind of interesting to talk about these elaborate crimes, the sense of always escalating and how dangerous that is and all the different perspectives. And at the same time, I think, at least for me, almost all of my favorite Batman stories are really long, elaborate plans.
I'm completely split on those. Some of my favorite Batman stories are those really complicated. I mean, Last Laugh that we talked about last week, rereading that got up into my top 10 Joker stories.
Yeah, like Last Laugh, so like Grant Morrison's Batman is one big elaborate thing.
Yeah. But some of my other favorite Batman stuff is really low key. Like Long Halloween, I mean it's pretty complicated and stuff, but it's not like big event worthy kind of thing. It's just Batman solving a series of murders. Like, and I mean, it's elaborate in the sense that it's like complicated and complex and stuff, but it's not like the same. It's nowhere near the same level as like a DC Universe event. It's just a really solid story that follows a series of murders and Batman trying to solve them.
Right.
So I'm all over the place on that. I like my Batman in many different flavors.
Right. I mean, so do I. But it seems like at least for most of my top 10, like Nightfall is that way, No Man's Land is that way, Grant Morrison's that way, Dark Knight, Dark City is that way. I don't know. It's interesting that we always talk about DC being event driven, and I always talk about how much I hate that. But then most of my favorite Batman things are events.
What can you do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's hard to top Nightfall, but no, it's bizarre, and I wonder if part of the reason New 52 doesn't work as well as it could have is because every Batman arc with Scott Snyder was an event. Like, it was always a year-long story event. And then every other writer had to tie into it, but then they couldn't because then they had to deal with the ramifications of the previous event while setting up the next event.
Right?
Like, it doesn't work when all you're doing is writing movies.
And that's the thing, is, like, movies are set to have an ending, whereas comics need to continue.
Yeah.
And so everyone's complaint is, oh, it always goes back to the status quo. I'm like, yeah, and, you shouldn't be trying to shake up the status quo. You should be, like, part of comics is just being able to go pick up an issue and not have to read more than the introduction page to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
That's a part of reading comic books that people should be able to do, but now everyone writes for trades, and not only did they, like, everyone was writing for, they don't write for trades anymore. Everyone was writing for trades in the early to late 2000s. Now everyone's writing for omnibuy.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's irritating as all hell. I don't want to have to buy 4 trades to just get one story.
Right? It's crazy to try to do that. I'm like, how the fuck? Like, the whole point of the New 52 was trying to get people onto comics. How the fuck was that supposed to manage to do it when every single arc is like this huge epic thing? Like, where's the room for just tell a good fucking story? I miss one and dones to death. Oh my god.
And I mean, people have this weird idea that you can't do a one-and-done story and advance characters. And no, that's not true at all. You don't have to have one big elaborate monster villain scheme to make characters go from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. Like, that's part of the... Because I'm reading through this right now. It's part of the genius of Wolfman and Perez's Teen Titans is there's not one big story arc trade to trade. There's like 8 issues. Every issue's got a different villain in a different scenario. But the through line is the team trying to learn how to work with each other.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need anything more than that.
Yeah, that's great stuff. It's just characters evolving over time. And then there's, like, the criticism of, well, if they're not, changing up the dynamic, then it never has any stakes. I'm like, that's not true, because you never know when the dynamic might change. I'm not, like, against people eventually changing it, but right now everyone's trying to change the dynamic, the standard, every single time they write it. I'm like, no, it has to be special.
Yeah. No,
you can't introduce a new Robin every other week, otherwise it doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
When one fucks off. You can't have Superman lose and gain Krypton back 1,000,000 times every year. It doesn't work anymore. By trying to add stakes, you're actually taking them away.
Yep.
Because you're burning through stories that we could have. You're burning through stakes that we could have in order to have stakes every time.
Yeah, and I mean, that just gets into there's a different nature to comic book writing than there is to TV or film or anything else. It's something that's designed to never end.
Yeah, those are meant for an end. Movies and television are meant for an ending eventually. Television less so, but still. Whereas comics are not, and so it's this big thing, and that's why there's a theme of escalation. Cannot speak. Escalation with comic book crimes, because it becomes performance art. It becomes part of what the villain does, and that, I feel like I've said at the beginning of this, that bleeds over to television. We have to constantly try to top ourselves in order to prove just how smart, how great our character is, in order to solve these crimes. Or in the case of flipping it on to the other side of the crimes, we have to prove how smart, how clever our characters are by being able to pull this all off.
Yeah.
And one of the funny things about the Sly Cooper games, Bentley's plans never fucking work out.
That's true.
Oh, that drove me crazy as I started getting through. I'm like, Bentley, your plans suck. They always go wrong.
And it's always like a one big elaborate plan he has for the entire area you're in, and it never works.
Yeah, it never works. Something always goes wrong at the last minute. You just gotta scramble and deal with it.
And it's no one's fault. It's just they don't work.
He tries his best, though. Anyway, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up, wouldn't you say?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, elaborate plans are elaborate, and this conversation was pretty elaborate, so...
Yeah, this was a fun thing to talk about, though. Yeah. I don't know, guys. Just don't go plan. If you're gonna plan a bank heist, just go in there with a gun. Oh wait, shit! I didn't get to make my joke. Damn it! I had this saved up and everything. I love this joke.
Oh, you got it now.
Yeah. Here we go. Okay, so let me explain to you my elaborate crime, Steve. I'm gonna rob a bank while dressed as a clown. I'm gonna have with me a can of spray paint and a goat and a big box full of pom-poms and cheerleader outfits. I'm going to hold everyone that's in the bank up and make them practice and perform elaborate acrobatic cheerleading stunts by dressing in the uniforms and using the pom-poms to cheer me on as I get into the vault and take out all the money and load the money up into a stolen Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. And then I'm going to paint obscene words all over the walls of the bank, have sex with a goat right in front of the security camera, and take a big shit right on the desk of the bank. And then I'm going to get away in the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. Recreate that, America's Most Wanted.
See, the way that plan's laid out, the police will get there way ahead of time, but they won't know what to do. Is this a robbery? Is this public nudity? Is this, like, I don't even know.
All the cops just quit when they show up and see the scene. They're like, nope. I've seen too much Batman 66. This ain't happening. I'm not gonna be one of those guys.
I feel bad for the goat.
Right.
He didn't ask for this.
Don't have sex with a goat, Jared. You know why? Because a goat eats tin cans, and you don't want to stick your dick up that. It's a Bob Saget joke.
That sounds like a Bob Saget joke.
Yeah, it is. He just, like, keeps talking to a member of the audience and giving him life advice. He's like, don't fuck a goat, Jared. Anyway, Steve, you got a review topic for us for next time?
I'm gonna need a minute to think. Let's see.
Okay. 1 minute on the clock.
1 minute on the clock. I hadn't really thought of it. I probably should have thought of something before we did this.
It's cool. You're just unprepared and therefore shall face the wrath of 1,000, I don't know, banshees? Yeah, let's go with 1,000 angry banshees.
1,000 angry banshees. Okay, how about we talk about, because this just came out, and it put me in the mood to read this anyway, and I think it'd make for some fun conversation. Let's go ahead and review Justice League versus Teen Titans.
Oh, is that the movie that just came out?
Yeah, the newest movie in the DC direct-to-DVD line.
Okay, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I don't like Teen Titans at all, so that should be an interesting conversation, though.
Yeah, and this version of the Justice League is filled with assholes, so when...
I just saw the Superman Green Lantern fight from Justice League War, and Superman's just a dick.
He is a dick. That's the problem with those movies. No, it should be fun. If people don't know, that movie is written by Brian Q. Miller, who did I think he did the Smallville Season 11 comics, but he's one of the only people outside from Grant Morrison to actually know how to write Damian.
Oh, fun.
So, if nothing else, it would be interesting to see him take over from all of those other shitty movies.
Cool. Okay. Well, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the Politician.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things like how to rob a bank.
Thank you.